This comes from producer Julian Calderon. This is it's a really nice washed Geisha. So this is a washed Geisha from Colombia. We have flavor notes of perfumed florals, bright citrus, bergamot, white peach, and honey sweetness. To me, this is a great example of just how value and quality in coffee are not exactly interlinked, where this is a coffee that it really checks a lot of the boxes for me, which is it has loud florality, loud acidity, it's clean, it's also just interesting to drink, right? This is a coffee that you can hand to somebody and be like, this is a nice coffee. And they taste it, and it's like, oh wow, I didn't realize coffee could have these more interesting characteristics. It's sweet, it's perceivable, and I think it's just a nice coffee to have. This is also roasted by Cabra, so it's pretty light. It's a nice coffee to sip on. Let's go ahead and brew. See here, Geisha, even though it's from Colombia, usually the beans are a little bit bigger. Smells nice. This is also a coffee that really, really benefits from rest. Please let this one sit there for at least 3 weeks before brewing. I brewed this coffee about a week off roast. It needs time to open up. Best with rest. So we're brewing this about, I think, 2 weeks off roast. So some of my notes are going to be pretty close, but I think what you'll find is you definitely want to let this coffee sit there and rest. You'll also look at this recipe, and it'll be kind of interesting for those of you. This is actually just a lot of water each pour, and it's going to hit the overflow, but this is the recipe that La Cabra really, really likes, and I think it works quite well with this coffee. It actually works really well with most La Cabra coffees. So let's go ahead and brew. Really, really floral. Flowers. Definitely, I would say white flowers, for me at least. Very floral forward coffee. The last few limited releases we've had, for example, the Regalia and the Prodigal, were very acidity forward or body forward. This is a floral forward coffee. So I would suggest you taste all these coffees side by side. And by now, as these coffees rest, really see how they open up across the following weeks. Yeah, it's still so floral forward as this coffee gets brewed. And it's also grind size 60, which is decently coarse. It's, not super, super coarse, but you see that flow is there. So constantly adding water, we'll see this in a bit. We have a long bloom, so it'll help open up the coffee, especially if you got it in a little fresher. But when we start brewing, when you start tasting this, definitely florality forward, and then we'll see kind of a citrus acidity, and you can see this recipe is just adding water. Right, and what's going to happen is because it's a coarser grind, we still see that constant flow out, and you're kind of just letting the water column push the coffee, through, if that makes sense. This is a different approach. A lot of people always ask us, hey, is this recipe actually the correct recipe? It hits overflow. Yes, it is. It actually works really well for a lot of these La Cabra coffees, especially the ones we are featuring, like this Julian Calderon Geisha. All right, it is wrapping up, so 1:16 ratio on this guy, almost 3 minutes. So that's because we have just constantly adding water, and it is a pretty coarse grind. So there we go. We finish up here. I'm gonna give this a smell. Yeah, it's so floral forward. That's what's interesting about this. Very, very floral. Let's give it a taste. Once this coffee cools down, that's when I think we're going to get a lot of those more interesting acidities that, we'll get that acidity, but still for sure a very, floral forward. I would say white flowers. Honey. Honey's also a thing that I smell in here. It's pretty warm, so when it's hot, honey, flowers, I would say floral forward, and then honey sweetness. Not really much acidity at this point, but long linger of sweetness, very, very clean florality. Like no weirdness that I'm tasting, but long sweetness, long linger. This is a very, very sweet coffee. I'm trying to cool this down, and we'll see some more of this acidity start to pop. Okay, there we go. Acidity is starting to pop up, but florality is this top thing that I'm tasting. Now I'm getting a little bit more of this citrus acidity that's like underneath, and then just tons of honey sweetness. So still the most interesting thing with this coffee is just like the level of florality out of a coffee that doesn't cost that much, and it's not super, super crazily processed either. This is a washed coffee, right? It's just lovely to sip on. Very easy to drink too. Sweet. High perceivability of florality and sweetness. I'm gonna really, really cool this down and see where this acidity goes, but I think really what you're gonna experience mostly in here is the flowers, the florality. Okay, Now that it really, really cooled down, I took that sip there. I see a little more of that citrus acidity pop up, but it's still just very, very tied in with the florality. So I would say like flowers, peaky, a slight peak of acidity in there, citrus, clean, pretty structured, honestly, but then goes into that lovely long sweetness, long linger. Yeah, wow, nice sweetness, nice cleanliness. It's really, really interesting florality. Very, very tasty when it is hot. Definitely tea-like, but yeah, wow. I do think if you let this coffee rest out into that 6, 8, 10-week mark, we will see a little bit more acidity in the cup, but I think really the structure of like the flowers in this coffee are going to be very interesting to you all. So that's all we have for today. La Cabra Julian Calderon Wash Geisha. Really, really tasty coffee. Floral forward, sweet, good texture. Let this coffee rest, let it cool down, and taste it. And I hope you guys enjoy this one. We do have a natural, very similar coffee, but natural forward, very fruit forward, very different presentation to this. That's also currently available. But thank you guys so much for spending the time to watch this video and taste this coffee alongside me. I have so many more interesting coffees that I will feature. So thank you guys, and I'll see you in the next one.